Peace, 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 everyone. Shabbat shalom, Shabbat shalom. Yeah, I see you in the space of a cruise. Peace to you. And peace to everyone who's coming in. Peace to everyone who's finding this from the archives. Welcome, welcome. Of course, first of all, we gotta give honor to the Most High Yah. Give thanks for the space. And give thanks to Chief Yuya as and this text. Speaking of peace, Chief Yuya, Erev Tov. Yeah, man. I will you have exacted the greatest moments of this great time. Yes, man. Yeah, same to you, Chief. Willfully, your movements have been going well, they're strong, and you got everything done that you set out to do. And I saw the music that you put up on Instagram too. Looking forward to that. But yeah, we're gonna get into it. So we're continuing our discussion on family in the Anu way, and I just want to take a moment to acknowledge the preface, right? And the reason we read the preface every time is because there's a certain mind that you have to have when you come into when you open up this text and sit down to read it. It's not something that you just thumb through. I see everybody coming through. Peace, Soft Arlene. Peace, Sister Quanda. Welcome, welcome, welcome. All right, so I'm going to read a condensed version of the preface. Condensed excerpts from the Anu Way Foundations. This book is not to be read only once. Read the words of this book of knowledge and wisdom out loud. Discuss the convictions of this work with your Anu brothers and sisters. Share this information with your people. This publication should be read daily. Every line in this book can be taken out of context and studied on the strength of its own potential. The truth is to be deliberated. Right. So, peace, Sister Kashia. We're continuing the chapter on family, and tonight we'll be beginning our section on children. Right. I know we've gone through the courtship phase, and we've gone through the betrothal phase, and even some of the procedures surrounding the actual marriage. But now we're dealing with children, right? So I'm going to read the paragraph and then we're going to deliberate. So the paragraph says sexual intercourse establishes a marriage, but children are what institute a family. It is better to have only one or two children in your homestead if you cannot sustain more. The added responsibility of a large family is not the destiny of all estates. You should never have more children that you can correctly nurture. If you are living in a loving community of fellow if you're living in a loving community of fellow followers of the way, your children will have plenty of playmates and spiritual brothers and sisters. You do not have to have a large brood of children to raise a large offspring of children. Right? And that is from the Anu Way. Peace, Sister Deidre. Peace, Sham the Joy. So what we are exploring tonight is just concept of children, right? And we have all seen the the havoc that dysfunctional families have wreaked in communities and in society as a whole, right? Families that did not go through this courtship process or the betrothal process, who didn't take the time to respect the process. So many families are put together, like they're just put together. They're not really properly conceived or constructed, and as a result of that, they tend to unravel in very devastating ways. It's not just devastating to the people within that family, but all of the elements that put that family together, or was supposed to be putting that family together, they tend to separate and just wreak their own little individual pockets of chaos in their community because there's no structure and order there. So what I wanted to do is take an excerpt from Solutions for Dysfunctional Family Relationships, and it deals with this topic, actually putting together a family, but not really getting together in a conscious or procedural way. There's no community around it. There's no ritual around it. There's no process. It's just what they would quote unquote passion. So this is in the section that deals with rearing children. When individuals choose to have children in a slapdash manner with anyone who will provide an egg or sperm without objectively considering the integrity or character of the person desired to co-create with, they are playing a game of Russian roulette. I'll read that again. When individuals choose to have children in a slapdash manner with anyone who will provide an egg or sperm without objectively considering the integrity or character of the person desired to co-create with, they are playing a game of Russian roulette with the lives of future children. A child has a divine right to manifest the highest or lowest nature of the mother, father, or a combination of them both, or the environment. This should be solemnly considered when one is looking to procreate with their current or idealized partner. There are instances where a child will physically, emotionally, or mentally exhibit the traits of one parent to a T, regardless of the rearing they have received. This, in most cases, cannot be trained or disciplined out of them. This is why family backgrounds should be thoroughly researched and uncovered. And that was all I really had planned on reading tonight, but I had reviewed it a few minutes ago, and I just wanted to tack this following paragraph onto it. All too often, one parent will make a pronounced cultural investment, and the other parent would makes a choice, informed or uninformed, to choose a lifestyle or culture that sits in direct opposition to their parental counterpart. This scenario causes a split camp and a home with a spirit of multiple personality disorder. Right, and I thought that part was key to what we're discussing tonight, because the minds of the parents and those that came before them, the blood and that conception of what this child would be, that all of that goes into this child's destiny. You're constructing a life or an environment or a space to bring this child into, but because you're not consciously doing it doesn't mean that you're not constructing it. Just because you don't consciously create an obstruction in a road doesn't mean you didn't do it. There's still some boxes in the road. You're still causing car crashes, and that happens on the path of the child because you didn't take the time to properly choose your mate and consider the fact that this union is basically the foundation for or the launch pad for all of the children or all of the people that are going to be flowing through it. So you have to make sure that the gateway is clear. They're not coming through, they don't have to wade through a bunch of muck or a bunch of things that you didn't deal with. And now all of that stuff is coming through with them, and they have to take it on now, and they have to deal with your karma. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you're the one making the bad choices. The one bad choice you may make is your mate, but that leads, that opens a whole can of worms. So I'm going to go through it, as we do, sentence by sentence, right? And the first sentence says sexual intercourse establishes a marriage, but children are what institute a family. So all that we've gone through, all of the discovery and the courtship, all of the marriage, all of the marital rights, you're together now. You have a marriage, but you don't necessarily have a family until you have children. Similar to you're not really a business person until you can create jobs for people. It's a similar thing. So what's happening here is your children are going to be what institutes your family, right? Or as Chief had mentioned, countless times, a family is a business. It's better to have only one or 2 children in your homestead, if you can't sustain more. And this led me to the 14 keys. It led me to think on justice, right? But before we get into justice, I just want to post this question, right? And this question is, speaking about how families are sometimes improperly constructed, have you ever encountered someone whose parents actually planned their conception, whose parents actually planned their birth? They set aside provisions. They said, this is what they're going to inherit. This is what, this is the environment that they're going to grow up in. This is the school that they're going to go to. Have you ever encountered someone whose parents planned their conception? And could you really see the difference between them and maybe someone who wasn't planned, or someone who was quote unquote an accident, which they're not an accident. But yeah, that's the question that I wanted to ask. And I am going to check the chat because I can see some movement. Shalom, shalom, shalom the joy, peace, Emmanuel. Sister Kashia is throwing a pixie dust in the chat. Talk to her speakers, peace, Shabbat shalom, peace, our Haru. Chief Yuya says, far too many selfish agendas saturating the creation and producing of offspring. Children produced of this schema. Children produced of this schema don't come from heaven, but just a lower astral dimension. Right. And you touched on this a few times before, Chief. Sometimes females will have children just because they're lonely and they want something to coddle. Males would go around creating multiple families and they can't take care of them. They can't structure them, they can't order them, they can't give them all direction because they're not coming under the same banner. They don't want to come under the same banner because there's no banner. There was never a homestead established, and then you deal with the mating, or even like conceptually, there was just, I want a feeling and I want it now, and I don't really like, I'm gonna roll the dice. I know a brother like that. He was like, if it happens, it happens. you know. Um, Chief US says, I have met people who plan their children, and markedly there are always less children, maybe 1 to 2 tops, but they are totally poured into. Right. Sister Kashia, yeah, she laughing, she throwing all this pixie dust in people's face. Like, share and subscribe. Yeah, so I'm gonna leave that question up, and we're gonna read through it, and then I want to get to the idea of justice or even-handedness, right, from the 14 keys. So the marital event need not, hold on. Okay, I left that in by mistake. The added responsibility of a large family is not the destiny of all estates, right? Going back to the point that Chief you had just made about usually there are less children, but they are totally poured into, as opposed to having a lot of children and having your energies and your resources spread very thin. And also, you should never have more children than you can correctly nurture, which it seems like a no-brainer, but it actually has very, very long-reaching, far-reaching ramifications. But before I get into that, I see a couple of more posts in the chat. Sham the Joy says, I have encountered that and seen the difference. There is less tension, especially financially. I have seen how long-term provisions for children's future also makes a difference. Chihuya says, I plan all my children, but I tend to plan everything. I enjoy building around the idea of bringing forth youth and all of the associated activities. It clarifies purpose in a heartwarming way. Yeah, yeah, I feel the same way when I think about educating children and creating environments for them to learn, and rather than beating them over the head with a book. You're trying to put something into them, rather than seeing what's there, what kind of gifts they came with, and as a result, sometimes children's gifts can get buried under this mountain of information. Rather than engaging them, you just give it to them. Here, take this. I don't want to hear nothing. Go in the corner, shut up, and read. You know, so it's very when you think about the ramifications of each step or each action that you make around children, like even if you accidentally curse in front of them, you know, it is what it is. If you don't want that type of language around your children, and you accidentally say something, or you may even speak to them at an elevated tone or out of a level of imbalance, you can see how long, like how much of a bruise that can leave on their emotional body, and how long it takes for them to actually heal that. So being very, um, very strategic, and forward thinking about your actions around children are very is key to raising healthy children. A lot of people don't realize how, I don't want to say fragile, but how impressionable children can be. And with that, I want to actually make this reference from the 14 Keys. Like, I was tempted to read this entire section on justice because it's so apt to what we're speaking about, right? And I'm just going to read the definition, and then we're going to go into peace and precious. We're going to go into the rest of the paragraph. But again, the question is there on the screen. Have you ever encountered someone whose parents planned their conception? So justice, rewards or punishment. Justice defines. So just ice, or to serve just ice, would be a delivering of a stilling, non-transforming demise. Due to this, we use the term even-handedness as a healthier and new interchange. So just keep that in mind. We're speaking about the ma'atic principle of justice, but we're using the term even-handedness. So even-handedness is an administration of law. Law is the contour of a commanding order. In order for a law to be acceptable to an individual or a group, the paths to the supreme must be wholeheartedly agreed upon. Wholeheartedly agreed upon. Not, oh, I see you doing that thing over there, and I'm not gonna do it, but do you? Meanwhile, you'll have the same child. So, yeah, I don't know what your mom will be doing, but we don't do that here. We pulling your child to the side. There must also be an agreement on a calculation of law that holds jurisdiction of those who have contracted with it. Excuse me. Justice is a concept that invites great debate based on its inference to a changeable chain of command or rule of law. Right? And then just going to skip down. So even-handedness is a means of directing individuals towards what would relatively be considered high morality. So, for example, if someone says that cleanliness is next to godliness, then the conclusion would infer that a clean person is closer to the highest authority in all existence than an unclean one. Would the same be deduced for organisms that thrive and develop in unhygienic environments? Would they serve a different creator, or would their justice / even-handedness be characteristic of their natural environment? This demonstrates the changing reality of justice's judgment. So even-handedness provides the rewards and punishments associated with discriminating actions. Discriminating actions. Like I would tell you to underline that if you was reading along. It is the method that the cause and effect axiom are delivered through. This idea of cause and effect, or give and take, connects us to the Ma'atic concept of reciprocity, right? So we're dealing with the concept of give and take, and we're dealing with the concept of discriminating, right? Discriminating actions, meaning you're looking at an action and you're seeing if this thing is, something that you want to do. Okay, this is the effect of this action. I might not want to do that. What's going to happen if I stick this fork in the electric socket? I'm good. As opposed to, ooh, what does this button do? Like Dee Dee from Dexter. Chief US says, key piece, Master Antonio, asked about parents planning, collective vision. I have seen times when one parent is more focused on family cultivation and the other is only present biologically. Yeah, unfortunately, that has become, I don't even want to use the word, I'll say normalized, to the point where you see one that's really gung ho for having a well constructed family, and the other one is just there, you know, just leaning. I'm just leaning on the wall, just leaning there. Don't mind me, I'm just here. And they think that providing resources, however large or small, contributes to the construction of the family itself. And you can see various examples of people who have money, but their children are still degenerates because they didn't have the culture to go along with their resources. So top tier speaker says, I have not encountered parents who properly plan. Many are irresponsible when it comes to planning for children, just like they are unaccountable for their own purpose, right? So you don't know your purpose, but you're bringing someone else into this plane, and like there's no thought. I almost wanted to ask, what do you think? But there's no thought. There's no forethought. It's just what's happening now, and it's usually a very egoic thought process, which is crucial because the conception of your children begins in the mind. It begins in the mind of the parents. What are we going to produce? What kinds of actions and what kinds of movements are conducive to what we say we want to produce. And if we don't have that, then maybe we should hold off for a minute and really put this thing together. But again, that's still coming from a secular perspective, because if you've been here for the whole time we've been dealing with family, you would have discussed that before you two even got together, right? So that's another point that I wanted to make. You have to properly conceive your children in your minds before you even get to, bumping uglies. Which is usually what people want out of relationships now. They don't really want anything else. Children happen, then it's like a mess you have to clean up, which is present in the energy that you give your children as well, which I think is foul. Peace, Sister Venera. So if you're living in a loving community of fellow followers of the way, your children will have plenty of playmates and spiritual brothers and sisters, And that's another key point, because some people, they just can't keep it in their pants. they don't really consider what's going to happen, and they like to blame passion. But passion, like, what is that? Like top tier speakers just said, you're so unaccountable for your actions, and you think that because you want something, it means that you should have it, without even thinking about it. But thoughts go out the window with their clothes, But I wanted to ask another question, right? And it's not so much so about the parents, planning the conception. So let's say that the parents did plan the birth. The parents said, okay, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. We're going to put all the things we need to put in place. But even if they achieve all of that and have this wonderful child, they live in the ghetto and they're surrounded by a bunch of knuckleheads. They send the child to, I don't know, a public school or even a private school with a bunch of bad children. Some of the private schools where I grew up, their children were worse than, government school children. And that's an issue as well. And Chief had touched on this before in the segment that he and Sister Moksha did. What are you building? And one of the points that Chief had made was if you're not raising these children around other children who are, but I'm not going to say that because I'm going to give you an answer. So I'm going to put that there. I'm going to keep reading. I'll come back to that point. I'll stick a pin in that. So you do not have to have a large brood of children to rear and raise a large offspring of children. And this speaks to your community, the people that you have around you that are fellow followers of the way, or that are who are of the same ilk or your Aelites. You're growing and rearing your children around these people, who are good people. You have your community set up. You're practicing cooperative economics, and you're practicing the science of family. So you have a lot of playmates for your children. But what are some of the consequences of not having that? What are some of the consequences of having or rearing children in an imbalanced environment? And I'll hold off for that, right? And again, a lot of these segments you can find a lot of insights about them on Anu Life Global Ministries, on Chief Yuya's channel, even the Chief Yuya podcast that we've been referencing since we started this aspect of family or courtship, and that is courting versus dating, which really speaks to some of the motivations behind the making of some families. I can't even say create because they're not planned. It doesn't happen in the mind first. It happens from the bottom up, and some of these things happen because we think that certain forms of secular coupling are healthy. I like this person, so I'm just going to hang around them, and then I'm going to get physical with them. And we're going to simulate a marital experience. I'm going to start ironing his clothes or bringing him food, or he's going to start helping her with finances, or when she gets a flat tire, she calls him. But there wasn't really due diligence done beforehand. So when you try to actually marry after that, it's like an oxymoron because you're already married. What happens is it unravels, or you're not properly prepared for all of the things that comes with a union. Peace, sovereignties. So I'm gonna go to the chat, and Sister Kashia says, if the children are within an imbalanced environment, they can easily be inspired by that environment and undo what is being done within the homestead. Right. So it's like coming in your house and not taking the shoes off. You're tracking mud everywhere. Chief Yuya says this is also where plural marriage comes in. A woman may have 0 to 1 child, but there could be many children to rear, and a poly-minded family sees all children of a community as their responsibility. Chief Yuya also says, true, Sister Kashia, if a child is in an imbalanced environment, the home is imbalanced already. Sane, caring parents don't send their children into perilous settings unless it is communal ritual, right? So similar to rites of passage or what do they call it? Like a vision quest. I remember, I think it was from the movie Dreamkeepers. You know, there's like a vision quest aspect, and the young man had to go out for his rites of passage. You know, and so and he would have to go. Joy says the imbalance may push children to find balance through unknowingly harmful cultures. Very true. I can't tell you how many um, of my peers learn about sex from their peers, you know, and their peers probably learn about sex through that plastic bag full of VHS tapes, you know, stashed away in their parents' closet. No one was supposed to find, you know, watching what was going on between squiggly lines. Yeah, that's their education. But you know, they want to tell you all kind of things about sex, and all they know is like the mechanical stuff. They don't know the spiritual aspects of it. How could they if they don't have proper rearing? Um, yeah, another thing with raising children and raising children in imbalanced environments is it can sort of amplify the imbalance that's already there, you know, from their parents. So you have a you have an inferiority complex, and your spouse has trust issues, and you send your children out into a world without your guidance or supervision, and they're basically just mingling with a petri dish of psychological trauma, you know, psychological imbalance. Like, what would be the result of that little experiment that you just conducted? Like, what would you produce? You know, and then they come home and you're like, whose child is this? You know, whose child is it? You know, I shouldn't laugh. But yeah. So going back to that aspect of solutions, you know, a child has a divine right to manifest the highest or lowest nature of the mother, father, or a combination of both, or their environment, right? So there are some split camp scenarios where the parents are also at odds with one another, and they try to get their offspring to turn against the other one. You know, that's common as well. They try to minimize the amount of time they can spend with the other. You know, they can try and badmouth them or speak ill of them in front of the child. You know what I mean? Um, and they can berate the traits that they see of the other parent in them. You know, there's a almost common saying over here in the Bahamas, like you good for nothing. You just like a good for nothing pop. You know, like what are you doing by saying that? What do you even gain by that? You're not thinking. You know, coming from an emotional or a deadened mindset. Yet you have this child running around, and you're killing them. You know, you're strangling their spirit by doing these things. So having children is a very sacred and a very it is not for irresponsible people. You know, you should have to earn the right to do it. And I referenced roots in the last segment that I did, and there was the rites of passage segment, right? And the kindongo is like, if you don't return to your village a man, then you won't be allowed to marry. You know, the children of such a union is a danger to their community. Case in point, Shamda Joy says that's a very common one, and it's a setup. Everyone involved, a setup for everyone involved. Exactly. Nobody wins. You know, this isn't like if I win and you lose, then I'll be alright. If any of us lose, we all lose, right? And victory for one should mean victory for all. Ipaco Bahamas says, Abu Cruz, Our Cruz says major consequence of wrong environments are needed discipline development in the child. Needed discipline development in the child, right? Restricted exposure to trauma-filled scenarios is an advantage in proper child structured environments. That's true too. You know, the level of discipline that a child needs, it it's very it's very volatile when they're young, because again, this goes back to having multiple people around the child, even aunts and uncles, because I may say, we eat this, we don't eat this. And if I'm dumb enough to let them around, leave them alone with my um, siblings or cousins or whoever who isn't of the same culture, who doesn't understand the science or the calculation that goes into what I'm trying to point to this child, they're going to be like, but, oh, I got some snacks for the, oh, AJ. You know, I got some snacks for AJ. Yeah, he's going to like this. You know, I got some Cheetos and Doritos. Children eat that, right? That's children food. Cheetos and Doritos. Yeah, I got some sugar for him, you know, because he likes sweets. And I don't know what you be feeding him, but when he come here, he likes it. Now they come back to you with a runny nose, you know, and coughing because they're sick. They went around a sick environment, and they're going to reflect that environment that you allowed them to be in. You know, Barack Obama says this is missing in poorly structured home sets. Yeah, yeah, it is. Sister Shirley says, "Oh, peace, Sister Shirley, peace." So yeah, I want to go back to what I was going to say, if I can remember. I didn't want to give away the answer. I think I forgot. Oh, you'll never know. You'll never know. But yeah, I think I might have said it, you know, in one way or another. But all that we've been speaking about deals with cause and effect, right? The causes that you put out have to be understood. And you can't have understanding if you aren't aware, like consciously aware of what you're doing, you know, or what it is that you're building. Sovereign Eats says one pervasive consequence is that the imbalance becomes. I'm glad you said that because you were in my example. Peace, Sister Marsha. One pervasive consequence is that the imbalance becomes the standard or norm for the child. So if the woman always usurps the master of the home, youth sees a woman as the headstrong parent slash lead. Yeah, yeah, that's a very good point as well. You know, when you have those split camp families, children might decide to, you know, I'm not going to listen to any of you because neither of you are making it that much sense, right? And it goes back to that example that Chief had basically said in that segment. You know, what are you building? If children aren't being raised around, you know, families and children who are of a similar culture, then what's going to happen to, you know, that child that you what's going to happen to that child that you've poured all of this wisdom into? You know, their environment is going to beat them. It's going to saturate into them because the only place they see, right? I guess we could end quote a little while ago, but the only place that they see um, righteous culture being exhibited is at home. And the dominant society says that people who do things like that are crazy, right? So it's already set up to where like it's a slippery slope. The second you let your children out the house alone, you know, and you see it a lot in 90s movies. Like you don't even see it anymore because mission accomplished. But back in the 90s or in the 80s, you would always see children sneaking out at a certain age. And it evolved from or devolved from children sneaking out of the house without their parents' permission to children actually just being able to leave the house. Oh, she's a teenager now. She's responsible. Really? Like, what are you going out to do after dark? You know, are we just gonna see a movie? Hmm. Yeah, but nowadays it's just, oh, this is my boyfriend Kyle. We're going up to my room. You know, it's nonchalant. You know, it's done. So children don't even they don't even seek permission anymore from because there's so much access to the outside. You know, there's a leak in the boat, and now the boat is just full of water. So you're like in a submarine underwater with a leak, and you try to ignore it, hoping that it'll go away. It's not. Chief Yuya says the children are understanding, which is the why, but some don't ask one another why we want them. This produces warring agenda in a child who, in a healthy situation, would be a focused why. Yeah, yeah, that's very true. You know, they would be focused on the purpose that they came here to fulfill, as opposed to, like, I guess you saw this a lot in those movies as well, wandering through their life, you know, and wandering through the world almost aimlessly, searching for purpose, you know, when they should have had it from birth. They should have known that, you know, this is what you're here to do. And you evolve that over time, but you shouldn't be walking around just, you know, asking what am I here for? You know, what's my purpose? Peace, brother Vermont. Peace, peace. Um Chief Yuya says, true, Sister Arlene, children will resent parents who withheld their best intelligence from them, and they will seek structure, sanity elsewhere. You know, Babylon always seems more safe than imbalanced parents. Yeah, imbalanced parents are extra scary because imbalanced parents have an emotional, um, they have level of emotional access that Babylon doesn't. Not right away. You know, you grow up around these people, you depend on them, and there's a level of there's a sense of betrayal and abandonment when you realize that a lot of the things that they do are harmful to you, and even when you bring it to their attention, they keep doing it. It's like, I'm better off not here um, with my alcoholic mother or my father who doesn't necessarily have a spine. You know, I'm here stuck with Uncle Lester. You know what Lester rhymes with. It's better for me to run away than to deal with that. And Chief was responding to Safta Arlene's comment. It says, when you rear a child in an imbalanced environment, it can cause the child to mistrust the parents when they get older due to an unhealthy lifestyle, you know, which is very true. How many things have you discovered about your children when you actually, you grew up to mature to a level where you could see harmful behavior. You know it when you saw it. And then you thought back like, huh, that happened to me. You know, it starts to unravel all of these things that you may have kept, you know, buried in your subconscious. You know, what kind of effects have these types of homes had on us? You know, that could be another question as well for us to explore. What has been the effect of my imbalanced environment? And I would say that learning about that helps you, it equips you to move towards healthier family formation, you know, and that goes back to that solutions excerpt, and it dealt with background, you know, understanding the family background, you know. I think brother Lowe says that he usually brings this point. People don't get married, families get married. And if you're not aware of the family background, family history, even the current family, and how that family has influenced your mate, and what they've done to balance themselves out after that, it it could get kind of tricky. You know, you're marrying them, sure, you're mating with them, but there's a lot of parts of themselves that they can't even see. So when it shows up in your children, like, oh, where did I come from? Oh, I never used to do that, but it's there in you. So again, courtship, doing the discovery. You go through the discovery phase. After you've done the discovery phase, and you understand that, this courtship, there is chemistry there between spiritual faculties. There's chemistry there in terms of our purpose. You know, there is an opportunity or potential to create something that is more than the two of us. You know, and that's the understanding aspect. You have the knowledge, you have the wisdom, and now you're moving towards the understanding, and that's the best part. you know, that's the best part. Um, Brother Vermont says, in an imbalanced environment, children will seek leadership outside the home, no matter the culture or doctrine placed before them. Right? That's very true. And Chief Yuya says, anyone wanting to form a family but can't seem to is a product of that home imbalance. The defect in us or in others is a product of dysfunctional homes. Now you can't even mate when the time comes. Yeah, that's a painful one right there, to actually come to that realization that you've been so improperly reared or handled. You've been in such an irresponsible environment for a child to be in, that you don't really know how to relate to people. You don't even know how to relate to or can tap into what it is that your purpose is. So when you find someone, or when your paths cross, I should say, are you really prepared to mate or match with anyone, or actually, you know, build something with someone? Are you vulnerable enough to tear down those walls and be like, okay, this is something that I'm dealing with. This is something that I'm dealing with. This is something that I'm dealing with. Before you even meet that person, and it's a very rough thing to do, and it's even rougher when you try to rush that process when you actually meet that person. It's like, okay, this is the person that I want to be with, but I've been avoiding all of my issues for so long, and that aversion can seep into the courtship process. This is why we have Jagnas. There's a video, a clip on YouTube, and they try to, I don't know if they try to make a point about courtship, or that discovery aspect. But there was this, I don't even want to call them a couple. There was this male and female, right? And I think it's based in the UK. And they met each other on a dating website. And they got together, they sat down, they started making comments because they were both nervous. And then they started just expressing their flaws. The whole date was just them spilling their guts to each other. And I don't want to say dealing with them, because they were just like, oh, I'm an alcoholic. No, I really am an alcoholic. It's like, oh, okay, that's fine. I'm an alcoholic too, and I'm super insecure. It's not like that, where they just say what's wrong with them and then just brush past it, because they actually got to the end of the night where there was so much sexual tension from that one night built up that, they went at each other. And then when all was said and done and they rolled over, they're just laying there, staring at the ceiling, realizing how much of a messed up person they are. That's not what courtship is. Courtship is actually moving through this aspect of your relationship with this person, whether or not you choose to carry it further. You're getting to know someone, but you're also getting to know yourself. through that interaction with them in a very honest and vulnerable way. That's something um, that's very sacred, which is why when you have a courtship going on, you tell no one knows but you and your jegna. No one has to be privy, and prying eyes can sort of taint that experience. And it's very similar when you have children. People interacting with your children who have dirty hands, you know, it's a very it's a corruptive sort of inclusion in that environment. Right. So I just wanted to touch on those few points. And as always, not as always, but I did it last round that I presented. I want to do it again. Final 10 minutes. Does anyone have any questions? About what we have just explored. Does anyone have any comments or statements before we leave? I want to open up the floor to that because we are going through aspects of our culture. We're reading through it, and I want it to be a bit more interactive. Okay, so I'm going to leave that in the air, and I'm going to go and see if there's any more comments. I think I missed this one. I missed a lot of these. Okay, let me see, let me see what's going on. Okay, so Ipaco Bahamas. I don't know why I keep saying it like to say in our cruise, but Ipaco Bahamas says, I have only met one person directly in my set. One of my brothers planned his first child, and he has a strong level of development. Right. That there's a very conscious effort to pour the best that you can into that child. And you're not just pouring into this child, but you've also taken time to set up an environment before you even bring this child about, which is similar to Bereshit, the creation of Adam. You know, the world was created, the environment was created, and then Adam was created and placed inside this environment and given instructions. You know, Chief US says, "Don't send your children into the world. Men should take their sons' places with them. Daughters should be at home until married, never wandering the world. Keep your children virginal, always covered." That goes back to what I just touched on. What else did I miss? Okay, and I ain't showing you no love today, Abu Cruz. I missed another one from Abu Cruz. Even as simple as speaking out of pocket, which is common in many youth now. I think this is in response to Sister Marx's comment about the example that the parents may set. And she'd use the example of a woman trying to usurp the master of the home. And if the woman speaks out of pocket and it's just accepted, that creates like a cascading effect. Sovereign Eats also says imbalance can lead to gender confusion as well, but it's a long list. Yeah, it's a very long list. Gender confusion in the aspect of the same aspect. Who does what in the house, and which role should I be aligning with? And again, it's not a decision that a child should have to make. These things should be laid out. They should be laid out before you even get there. Okay, so Chief Yuya says, great points. Good brother. Question, is anyone afraid to produce children? All right. So question for the room, is anyone afraid to produce children? Let me see what else was going on. Brother Ramon says, I was afraid for a long time. Chief Yuya says, and afraid not just because of past failures or mistrust issues, but even because of the state of the world you may be bringing them into. Yeah, that's a good thing to consider. TPL responded to Brother Vermont. Has that changed, Brother Vermont, or are you still working through it? Sham the Joy says, oh, this is another question. I wonder if I should read that. I'll read that question after I see if there's any more responses to the first one. Sister Kashia says, I'm not afraid. Shanda Joy says, definitely the state of the world concerned me for the past few years. I didn't want to selflessly procreate and subject children to danger. Yeah, that was something that I thought about, but it was leaning more towards that fear that I had of having children, leaned more towards my upbringing, and it was an issue of, what we talked about, having children that you can't really properly provide for. Chief Yuya says, absolutely, Sham the Joy. Check out Judges 6 and 12 and the background of Gideon. The work has been put in, though, beyond statement. Sham the Joy says, I will. Give thanks, Chief. Brother Vermont says, I'm 100% want them at this time. But at that time, I looked at what surrounded me and thought, this can't be all. Yeah. When you look at your environment and you don't necessarily see a reason to bring more children into the world, especially when you're looking around and you're seeing so many, so many of these families that we've been discussing, families that weren't planned or were poorly planned. And the result of that is children who don't necessarily have a culture or direction, and they're a danger to their communities. But my desire is to basically bring forth the opposite. Not desire, but my plan is to bring forth the opposite. But how do you do that, right? You look at what's going on around you now, and you have to ask yourself, is this my environment? I mean, is this environment my environment, or is this just an environment that I'm in? Is this environment surrounded by people who are raising their children in similar fashion to the way that I seek to raise mine? Should I get around those people, instead of being around people who will detract from what I'm doing, like with every fiber of their being? Because Babylonian mindset is steal, kill, and destroy. Anything that is of the Creator, you steal it, you kill it, or destroy it. And that's why we do need families. We need healthy communities, in order to bring these children forth. Even still, the state of the world is a very perilous one right now, and you have to get your patch of soil, your patch of land, in order to properly raise these children. Brother Vermont says, also mating choices also always scared me because I couldn't identify what a good woman was. Yeah, that's like a textbook issue with most families, and a lot of people just settle, they just pick what they could get, and they don't really strive for any type of development, or not just self-development, but development of their situation so they can maybe get around better people. But some of the mating choices that you have around you now, and just speaking as a man, seen a lot of the mating choices that are around, when you see what's going on the screen, or you see what's going on maybe in your immediate environment, it's like, is this what I got to choose from? So you need a better mating pool. And Chief had touched on this before in terms of, I'm going to get to you, Sham, I haven't forgotten you. Chief had touched on this before in terms of the rites of passage programs that he had run, or the youth programs that he had run, because he needed a better mating pool for his daughters. you know, and I want to get to Sister Sham the Joy's question as well. Can children redeem inherited imbalance, or is it inevitable that the imbalance will play out in their lives? You know, and what I just said is sort of a segue into that, because you have people who can make a much better impact on them. Children may leave the house because they recognize that this place isn't healthy, and they seek healthy places. A lot of them don't find it, but some of them do. Some of them lean into gang violence. Some of them lean into partying. Some of them lean into other communities that don't necessarily reflect their the goals or the standards of their people, or the more sane elders that are further up the line. But it is possible. It is possible to redeem those inherited imbalances. But you have to, like I was saying before, with that example of the two people who were dating, they glossed over what their issues was, but they didn't go through them. They got past them, and as a result, they realized how messed up their lives had made them, or how messed up they were. The things that they were perpetuating. So it's a process. You know, it's a process, and a courtship helps to highlight some of those things that you need to be addressing. Your jegna can highlight some of those things that you need to be addressing as well. Because of course you have to go through your jegna to say I'm interested in so and so, and they screen you, and they say, they may say, you know, I'll speak to so and so's jegna, or they may say, not yet. You have to deal with this thing, or otherwise we're gonna create a bomb, and, and we don't need that type of chemistry happening. All chemistry and good chemistry. Um, but yeah, I understand where you were coming from, Brother Vermont, in terms of mating choices. And Sister Chamonix, we had touched on this in terms of bloodline. The Chief had touched on it in terms of bloodline and family. And there has to be a renouncement, an acknowledgement of what those spirits are that have taken root in your family's bloodline, and a renouncement of that. And being a lawkeeper is an excellent start, because now you have, like, in even-handedness, now you have a law. And if you can't connect with someone, or if you can't find someone to connect with who doesn't have a law that you both can wholeheartedly agree with, then you're going to have chaos. You're going to have someone trying to be sneaky. So I can't stress how important that discovery phase is. You know. Okay, I'm missing some stuff. Imakuya says, peace, Anu family. I often long for the opportunity to produce a new family with the understanding I now have of what a family is supposed to be. You know, huh. Well, let's see. We've stated before that you don't necessarily have to be the one who produces. You know, you can be in a community of like-minded people, and you're not necessarily raising their children, but you see them going down the street and they're doing something they're not supposed to do. You let them know that's not it. That's not the move. But longing to produce, those children, like, what did you do the first time that was so wrong? And why did you make those choices? Is a good place to start in terms of that longing. That longing denotes a desire. That desire can be kind of tricky. Like, where does that desire come from? I would start there. Ipako Bahama says, I have plans to have 4 more children. I'm looking at possible adjustments for 6. That's an undertaking. I'll leave it at that. That's an undertaking to have 6 children. 6 more righteous children, and you already have children. So that, I don't know. Put me on game. You know something I don't know, but it seems daunting. I wouldn't know because I haven't gone through that rite of passage of having a child. Um, Sister Kwanda says, now, yes, but for a while I was weary of it because I didn't feel my parents properly prepared me, and I was scarred. I was scarred. I was scared of everything, including the birthing process itself. Yeah, that that also begs the question. How do you, like Sister Chamonix's question earlier, how do you sort of redeem those aspects? How do you redeem that stuff that's in your blood? I say scarred because I thought of, what could have happened to you emotionally that would have scarred you. What kind of things reside in your blood now, and how do you clean that up before you pass it on to someone else? Um, TPS says, yes, the mating choices here in the West are terrifying enough to make a man hold his seed back for life. The incentives provided to females toward domestic insanity and kidnapping are far too great. Yeah, that word says it all. Kidnapping. This is my son. They're trying to depot you out of your children, and the law supports it. You know, you may have some sense, but I know she ain't got no sense. Just the fact that she's saying my child, you know, that's enough for me to know I got this one. Top tier speaker says, I think the secular culture does a great job of instilling fear in women to move us away from what is natural for us to do. And this is to Sister Kwanda. Chandra Joy says, very true here. And Kashida says, I agree. And this is done on both sides. And this is done on all sides. Like, Western society casts a wide net in terms of what it is that they place in front of you in order to lead you away, like Ima Sequoia says, lead you away from what is natural. It's natural for for a woman to be with a man. It's natural. you know Now what's becoming normal is something different, and normal is also becoming the law. But do you wholeheartedly agree with that law? Do you even partially agree with that law? That's type of environment you need to be around or divorce from. CPS says celebrity divorce settlements get more attention than the wedding details. Sister Kwanda says definitely agree. Talk to your speakers. Oh, y'all going in. All right. Chandra Joy says yes, Chief. Weddings done in private. Divorce settlements figures open to all media. Yeah, I see a lot of people whose marriages I really don't care about, and the headline is so and so takes this much from this much in divorce settlement. But even if it's speculative, even if they're trying to do it, I don't even know how this stuff gets out. But you never see, you know, healthy families get put together. You just see dysfunctional ones falling apart, and you rarely see how they start. Like Chief and Sister Shamini said, you only see the ending, but how they end is usually how they started. Top tier speaker says, I had to detach from all secular world media when I gave natural birth. You really need to stay in the Garden of Eden in terms of your thoughts, and you'll find that fear leaves. Imaline says, Torah, Brother Antonio Torah, Chief UF, setting light on how important it is to have knowledge of family before starting one and having to deal with the consequence of the follow. Torah, Imani, give thanks. Sister Kwana says that part too, the emotional and mental scarring. Yeah, and Chief had touched on this as well. How do you not get scarred growing up in this environment? Like, how do you get through this experience in this part of the world unscathed? You can't. You have some sort of scarring to deal with. What it is, and being willing to speak to it and work through it is something else. That's something in a step in the right direction for sure. Imakuya says, yes, the longing comes from my past mistakes in raising my own and seeing the results. Right. So you have to be careful that the desire to create children doesn't come from a sense of regret. I've met people whose parents regretted what they did and wanted to raise them as a redemption, but they place so many high expectations on them without giving them proper balance. Because they were still imbalanced. And I've seen the results of that as well. Chief US says these family planning talks get the least views. However, if I fired up my channel and did a live on smells, rituals, and how to get your ex lover back, watch the numbers go through the roof. Yeah, and of course, yeah, you're more than welcome, Sister Arlene. Sister Kwana says Toda to Emma Sequoia. I should get a head start on that before I even meet or become pregnant. Give thanks. Yeah, you should have never left the Garden of Eden. Chief Yuya says all this affirming means all you sisters should either have the big belly or soon enough will be walking around with sleeping babies strapped to your back. Right. The big belly. Yeah. Okay, so we're a little over an hour, and I think I've gotten all the comments. Sister Kashia gives a 10-4. Talk to us, speakers. Ima Sequoia says, learn all that you can about the birthing process and make sure your body is in the best shape of its life. And Chief Yuya says, remember how Seth was redemption for the loss of Abel. Consider the process of what occurred between Abel and Seth, and that will show you how it's done. Give thanks for that, Chief. Yeah, definitely. Give thanks for all of you, for being so active in the chat. And I know that it has been, well, for me, it's been like a long, strong, doing a friend always tells me, a good brother of mine said, I'm always doing the most. I should have a YouTube channel called Doing the Most with Tony. But yeah, give thanks to you all. Willfully, you have a good rest. Give thanks for your questions as well. Willfully, I've, helped you out with working through it or providing answers. Willfully, you've learned something. And that is not just the people in the chat, but those who are coming and watching the replay. Peace to you all as well. And if that is it, I like to make a speedy exit for people asking more questions. You're more than welcome, Emo Sequoia and Sister Kashio. Shabbat Shalom. Enjoy your rest and get lots of it. Don't just sleep. But as Abarani would say, earn your quickening. So this is the resting period. So peace to you all and give thanks. Give thanks.